Okay, let us continue our discussion on that licensing components. So in the last two sessions, we have seen many of the components. So there are a few more components also which we'll discuss today. So before that, I'm just mentioning those components here. In SAP HANA Platform Edition, the main core components are providing HANA database server, HANA Studio, HANA Client, apart from this, a lot of optional software components offered by SAP. So most of them we have discussed like SDA, Smart Data Access, AFL, HANA Answers, Shine. We discussed about Spatial, Information Composer, and from SPS 9, some exclusive components like Dynamic Tiering. Then even we discussed about something called HANA Vora. So all these components we had a discussion. Apart from this, from SPS 9 itself, there is something called HANA on Power. A simple thing. Actually, what happened is, if you remember earlier, as I told you, whenever you want to run HANA database server in a customer landscape, so they need to have that certified hardware, which is mandatory. You know that. That's what we call it as an appliance. So there are so many vendors providing those appliances. One of them was IBM. Right from the beginning, IBM was one of the certified vendor. But later on, Lenovo has acquired a hardware division of IBM. So if you know something about this, is this acquisition happened in between? I think 3 4 years back, 3 years back. Oh, they have their own terms and conditions for that acquisition and all that, which we are not interested in. But all those IBM models become Lenovo models. So Lenovo is also a certified vendor now. But later on, what happened is IBM came up with a new hardware series called Power Series systems. IBM Power Series. But what of the HANA database software provided that is not compatible to run on Power Series systems? But there were some customers who are interested in using IBM Power Series hardware. And for those customers, what SAP has done is they provided a separate software which is compatible to run on Power Series systems. That's what they call it as HANA on Power. So separate DVDs they'll give. Now 2.0 version, if you want, there will be 4 DVDs. So 4 DVDs they'll provide separately on power. So HANA on power is nothing but HANA server software only, HANA database server software, which is compatible to run on power series systems. So that's the purpose of that. So that's also something new what SAP has given from SPS 9. And then again from SPS 9 only, so they've introduced something called SDI. Stands for Smart Data Integration. If required, this SDI you can use along with something called SDQ. This functionality also they are giving. If required, you can use this functionality also. This call it as Smart Data Quality. And then one more thing, there is something called SDS. Smart Data Streaming. So we'll discuss on this SDI, SDQ, SDS. What's the purpose of this? We'll discuss because there is some relevance with the components you come across in Enterprise Edition. So along with the components of Enterprise Edition, we'll discuss these components also. So let us see what are those. So we know there are two editions. One is Platform Edition. We discussed about the components there. And apart from that, SAP is also providing you something called Enterprise Edition. So what you need to remember is Enterprise Edition is an extension of the Platform Edition. That's the most basic point you need to remember. So what do you mean by that? When we say it's an extension of the Platform Edition, if you buy Enterprise Edition licensing, you'll get all the components of Platform Edition. So along with those Platform Edition component, you'll get some more additional components. So what are those additional software components given to you here? In fact, they're separate technologies, we can say. One is SAP Data Services, popularly known as BODS, Business Objects Data Services. Another one is SAP LT Replication Server. LT means Landscape Transformation and popularly known as SLT. So this is what we can expect in HANA Enterprise Edition, in addition to the Platform Edition components. One is Data Services, another one is SLT. And if you remember, I also mentioned that in the initial versions, SPS 03, 1.0, SPS 03, SPS 04, till that version, SAP used to provide one more edition of HANA. That was SAP HANA Enterprise Extended Edition. So that itself will suggest you that it's an extension of the Enterprise Edition. So what they used to provide in this Enterprise Extended Edition is, in addition to all this what we have mentioned till now, We used to have one more technology called SRS, Sybase Replication Server, but that they stopped it from SPS 5. SPS 5 onwards, they started giving only two editions, only Platform and Enterprise Edition, no more Enterprise Extended Edition. So there is some specific reason behind that. We'll come to that. I'll explain. So whatever I'm speaking about here, you're speaking about data services, SLT, Sybase Replication Server, SDI, SDS. All these are related ones. So what is the relation between all these things? These are all, you can call them as ETL tools, or you can also call them as replication technologies. ETL tools or replication technologies. So why do we need these ETL tools? Suppose, as I shown you earlier, this landscape, suppose there is a customer who is interested in using SAP HANA as a warehousing solution. Or you can also say that the customer want to use HANA as a data mart, MART, data mart, like this customer. What they do, they set up HANA database. Once they set up HANA database, what they want to do is they have already some data in the existing source systems. Like you can see here, some SAP source systems, some non-SAP sources they have. Requirement of this customer is you want to load the data from these different sources into the HANA database because you want to perform analysis of the data. So when you want to perform analysis of the data using HANA, so you want to load the data and store the data in HANA. So they want to load the data into HANA database. So when the customer want to perform this data loading from different source systems into HANA, he'll be able to perform that by using some ETL tools only. ETL means extract, means you basically extract the data from source systems. Then T stands for transform. Transform means conversion. If required, conversion of the data can be performed. Then L stands for load. Load the data into the database, HANA database. Or you can also call it as data replication. So they want to replicate the data from different sources into HANA. So when they want to perform this data loading or data replication, they need some ETL tools or replication technologies. So whatever we mentioned now, all these are those ETL tools or replication technologies only. There's data services, SLT, SDI, SDS, all these things. So the ETL tools are replication technologies which can be used for loading the data into HANA database or like this. SAP data services is already mentioned, popularly known as BODS. And the second one is SLT. And third one is direct extractor connection. Simply we call it as DXE. And the fourth one is Sybase replication server. Simply call it as SRS. Next, smart data integration, SDI. So as already mentioned, this can be implemented along with SDQ if you want, which we call it as smart data quality. And then finally, last one is smart data streaming, a special technology. So these are the different ETL tools or replication technologies offered by SAP, using which we'll be able to replicate the data from different source systems into HANA database. Now here comes the question. Now why do we need so many replication technologies? Can't we rely on one? No, the simple answer is no. There's no way you can rely on one replication technology, because every technology will have some limitations. So you can't consider one technology as a perfect replication technology for all the situations. So that's why SAP is giving multiple options to you. You choose whatever you want to use depending on the requirements there. So it is the responsibility of the solution architects to choose the right kind of technologies. So they'll decide which is a suitable ETL tool or replication technology. So when they want to choose these ETL tools or replication technologies, on what basis they decide? What are those factors they consider to choose the replication technology? The factors considered to choose the replication technologies are like this. The major factors are like this. The first one is type of source system. We don't know what type of source systems we come across. Because from customer to customer, the source systems varies. You can't predict that everywhere you find the same source system. There's no way. So source systems can be anything. It can be a source system can be file. File can be Excel file, CSV file, text files, Hadoop files. Source can be a standalone database like Oracle SQL Server DB2. Source system can be an SAP application like ERP, SAP CRM, SAP BW, SAP SRM. It can be a non-SAP application like Siebel, PeopleSoft, Oracle apps. There may be even some custom applications also you may come across. We don't know what kind of source systems. So the major factor is that type of source systems. Second one, format of the data. Third one, conversion requirements. And the fourth one is scheduling requirements. So based on these factors, they decide the suitable replication technology. Okay, so as I told you, every ETL tool or replication technology is having some advantages and limitations. So those solution architects knows that clearly, so they'll decide on that. And yeah, that's their decision. They'll take care of it. But just for your understanding, I'll just give you uh, the overview of each and every replication technology. What are the advantages and limitations we have? Yes, just for a better understanding. Okay, so that's not your job, but knowing that will be helpful for you. Just try to understand. So the first thing, if you look at the data services, BODS, popularly known as BODS, Business Objects Data Services, that's in the older versions. Now in the new versions, it's called SAP Data Services, like 4.2 version and all. If you look at the advantages of these data services, actually it's very popular one, popular ETL tool. You can see even this customer is using data services. Most of the customers, they use these data services. There's a lot of advantages we have with these data services. So what are those? What are those advantages we have with the data services? If you look at the functionalities of data services, one of the main benefit here is broad connectivity features. Broad connectivity features. So what's the meaning of that broad connectivity features? You can connect to almost any source. You name it, almost any source you'll be able to connect to. As I mentioned, maybe file systems, maybe databases, maybe SAP applications, non-SAP applications, web services, anything like that. So that's one of the actual main reason why it's so popular. So the broad connectivity features is one of the major advantage in data services. And second thing, the transformation, the conversion requirements. Sometimes you may want to perform simple conversions, like you just need to add prefixes, suffixes, and all that, which is a simple task. But sometimes your conversions may be very complex, where we need to write some conditions. Based on conditions, you need to perform conversions and all that. So even if you want to perform complex conversions, they are very much simplified because a lot of graphical facilities are available in data services. So those graphical facilities will allow you to perform those conversions very easily. So in a way, you can say the conversions are more simplified here. That's the second advantage. And then coming to the next one, generally when we are loading the data from source systems into your warehousing database, sometimes you want to perform your data quality check. Not always. Sometimes you want to perform data quality checks. Like suppose, example, if I want to load the data from my ERP system, SAP ERP system into my warehousing database, I don't need to perform any data quality check because the reason is whatever the data I have in my ERP system, it's already quality data. So I don't need to perform any data quality check there. Reason is you get the data into ERP system after checking everything. Like if an end user is performing a transaction like sales order creation, every information what is entering in the sales order transaction is verified. So it's guaranteed, it's quality data, so I don't need to perform data quality checks. But suppose you're replicating the data from files, some Excel files, CSV files, text files. There's no data guarantee of data quality there. So when there's no data quality guaranteed, if you load that data, when you're performing analysis of this data along with other data which you are loaded from applications like ERP, it may lead to some data inconsistencies. So you'll face those issues when we do analysis in the warehousing system. That's why in some of the situations, like when you're loading the data from file systems and all that, they want to perform data quality checks also. One of the advantage we have with the data services is the data quality management is also a part of it. Within data services, we have that built-in functionalities, data quality management functionalities available. So data services not only performing data integration, you'll also will be able to perform data quality checks. Actually, if you know the brief history of this technology, now we are calling it as SAP older version as I told you, BODS, Business Objects Data Services. Business Objects is a separate company. Actually, SAP has acquired that company. So that Business Objects company, they have some reporting tools also. So SAP has acquired that company. Part of that acquisition, they also acquired these data services. So even before SAP has acquired, that Business Objects company used to have two different technologies called one is BODI, Business Objects Data Integration or Data Integrator. The second one is BODQ, Business Objects Data Quality. So by combining both of these two, they've released it as a data services. So data services is a combination of DI and DQ. Yes, BODI plus BODQ. Two technologies actually. Combining it, they've released it as BODS, DIDQ. That's why the data quality management is also part of it. So, like this, lot of advantages we have. That's why it's very popular. But at the same time, there is also a limitation here. So, one of the biggest limitation when it comes to data services is data services can be used for scheduled data loads. Data services is preferred for scheduled data loads, but not for real-time data loads. What do you mean by that? See, when you're saying you want to load the data from a source system into HANA, you're not doing it one time. Regularly, you have to do it. And generally, what they do, they schedule it. Like using some jobs, they'll schedule it. Like every day evening, 6 o'clock, they are loading the data. Or maybe every 4 hours, they are loading the data like that. So data services is preferable for that scheduled data loads. Suppose assume that every day evening 6 o'clock they are loading the data from SAP ERP system into HANA database. And then on top of HANA database, they build the reports and they are analyzing the data using those reports. Now suppose today afternoon 12 o'clock you are performing analysis of the data in HANA. So when you are analyzing the data today afternoon 12 o'clock in HANA, which data you are analyzing? It's obvious that because of the scheduling, data what you are analyzing is yesterday's evening data. It's not latest data. It's not real-time analysis. But you know, some of the customers, in fact, most of the customers, they prefer to do real-time analysis. Real-time analysis means they want to perform analysis of the data up to date.
If they're analyzing data at 12 o'clock means till that time they want to have the data. So when that is possible, when that real-time analysis is possible, if you can perform real-time replications or real-time data loads. What do you mean by real-time data load or real-time replication? Real-time replication means suppose there is a new transaction performed in an ERP system, suppose a new sales order created. Without any time delay, immediately that sales order data should be replicated into HANA. So if you can replicate it immediately after the transaction is done without any time delay, that's what we call it as real-time replication. So if you can perform the real-time replication, your analysis also becomes real-time. So this data services is not at all suitable for that. That's one of the biggest drawback we have there. So data service is preferable for scheduled data loads, but not for real-time. Now, suppose if this customer want to replicate the data from ERP system in real time, then what he has to do? He cannot rely on data services. So that's when other replication technologies will be useful for you. So the second one is SLT, SAP Landscape Transformation. You can see that this customer is preferring to use SLT here, SLT replication technology. So if you see the advantages of replication technologies, SLT capabilities, if you see, it's capable of replicating the data either by scheduling or in real time. Both options are available there for you. SLT capabilities, if you see, it's capable of replicating the data either by scheduling or in real time. We can decide. Then immediately a question comes is, if that is the case, why can't we use only SLT? You can't rely, because again here also we have a lot of limitations. Real time scheduling options are there. It doesn't mean that you can rely on that completely. So that's the main advantage, SLT, both real time as well as scheduling. And as it's SAP's own technology, any basis guy can set up this very easily. Simple installations and configurations. In fact, once that installation configuration is done by administrators, generally done by basis people, it's done by basis consultants, then replicating the data is so easy for the developers or modeling people. With a button click, they can select the table and load the data. It's such a easy process. When you compare with the data services, such an easy process here. There in the data services, they have to design the data flows. Bit complex relatively. But here, it's just a button click will select the tables and data will be loaded. That's a advantage you have. So these are the advantages. But if you look at the limitations of this data, this SLT, one of the biggest limitation is the source system supported. You can't replicate the data from every source system. Only limited source systems are supported. So using SLT, you'll be able to replicate the data from SAP source systems like ERP, CRM, SEM, these kind of applications. And apart from SAP applications, you can also replicate the data from databases. The standalone databases like Oracle, SQL Server, DB2 like that. That's it. No other source system is supported. Only this. SAP source systems and databases. So that you can say one of the biggest limitation of SLT. And another problem you have with SLT is in case if they want to perform conversions, the transformation, conversion of the data. It's very, very complex here because there is no graphical facility. All the conversions need to be performed by writing some programming code, ABAP programming code. So they need to write ABAP coding for the doing conversion. So obviously that's very complex and it's going to be a bit expensive for the customer. So these are some of the drawbacks or limitations we have in SLT. That's why customers won't rely on one, they'll go with combinations. As you can see in this landscape itself, we have SLT as well as data services. The next one, third one, the direct extractor connection, DXC. If you observe one thing, part of our licensing, you don't find DXC anywhere. See that? I've mentioned so many components there, but there is nothing like DXC. Why there is no DXC? There is a reason. The direct extractor connection, the major advantage you have is DXC doesn't need any software. No software required. No additional software required. Obviously, when you don't need software, you don't need license. But how can they use it? Simple thing. DXC, it can be used only for replicating the data from SAP applications. Only SAP applications. It's very limited. Suppose in your company SAP ERP is running, like you can see it here. Only SAP ERP running. They have HANA database. They want to replicate the data from ERP into HANA. What they can do is they can use DXC as a replication technology. But when they want to use DXC as a replication technology, as I told you, there's no need of any additional software. No additional software, no installations required. But what they do is they do some configurations. There will be a direct connection established between your ERP system and HANA database. And apart from that, few setup steps will be performed both in HANA and ERP system. And once that is done, they'll be able to start loading the data from ERP system into HANA database. So the major benefit you have there is no additional cost. No additional cost. Hardly in a matter of 15-20 minutes you can do that configuration. That's the main advantage you have. All the built-in functionalities you are going to use. That, but the limitation is, as I mentioned, it's only meant for replicating the data from SAP applications. That's the biggest limitation. And second thing, only scheduled data loads you can do. Only scheduling, no real time. And conversions you cannot perform. No conversions possible here. Those are the limitations you have. So within those limitations, if they want to use, so without any additional cost, they can use it. That's an option. Very few customers they use this, except small customers where they have only one source system like ERP, CRM like that. Very few customers you find using this DX. And similarly, the next one is Sybase Replication Server, SRS. And this also you find very few customers for this Sybase Replication Server. And even Sybase Replication Server also you won't find part of this Platform Edition or Enterprise Edition. But as I mentioned earlier, till SPS 04, SAP used to provide one more edition of HANA called Enterprise Extended Edition. So in that Enterprise Extended Edition, SAP used to provide the Sybase Replication Server. As the name itself is suggesting, this is a Sybase product. Sybase Replication Server is a Sybase product. So if you people know this, SAP has acquired Sybase. Sybase is under SAP. Even though Sybase is under SAP, Sybase is a separate entity, separate business entity. So Sybase is having separate products. So the reason why they stopped giving it from SPS 5 onwards, there were some licensing conflicts. The Sybase product licensing is, the concept is different from your SAP product licensing. They try to include that in your SAP HANA licenses. So there were some licensing conflicts. That's why SAP stopped giving it. So from SPS 5 onwards, if a customer is interested in Sybase replication server, what you need to do is you need to buy the software separately. You need to take a separate license. You need to buy Sybase replication server license. When you buy the Sybase replication server license, they'll give a couple of components. One is called Sybase replication server, which will be deployed into the HANA database, and another one called Sybase replication agent, which will be deployed in the source. The only source supported are databases, nothing else, only databases like Oracle, SQL Server, DB2. Only these databases are supported. So they'll deploy this replication agent in the source database, and they establish connection between the database and HANA, and they'll start loading or replicating the data. So it's very limited because source systems are only database supported. But main advantage we have is the Sybase replication server is real-time replication. So there are very few real-time replication technologies in the world. This is one of them. So that's the main benefit what customer will be have. There are very few customers. So other than that real-time replication, we don't have too many advantages there. Now, what SAP has done is they've seen so many landscapes for different customers. If you see the replication landscapes or ETL landscapes, most of the customers they have complex landscapes. Most of the customers they ended with the multiple replication technologies. That's what happens in most of the places because of the limitations we have and all that. So SAP thought so it's becoming more complex that ETL or replication landscapes. So they want to simplify that. So that's when SAP has introduced this smart data integration, which was introduced in SPS 9. The main intention of SAP releasing this smart data integration is they want to replace this complex landscape with a simple one. They want to replace all these ETL tools with smart data integration. That's what main intention. It's not that easy, but that's the main intention of this SDI released along with SDQ, Smart Data Quality. Actually, combining both of this, SDI and SDQ, combining both of this, they also call it as SAP EIM, Enterprise Information Management. So SDI specialty is SDI need to be installed and configured as part of HANA database server only. So unless otherwise HANA database server is installed, you can't use SDI. So what it tell you that is, if you want to have SDI, HANA database server is a must. So HANA database server is installed. You have to install and configure SDI. And then using that, you can start replicating the data from different sources into HANA. So if you look at the advantages of SDI, all the advantages, whatever I told you for all these replication technologies, all those advantages you have, all the benefits. Wide range of source system supported, almost everything. In fact, they even went to an extent of providing something called SDK, Software Development Kit. Using that SDK, if there is a custom application running in the company, if there is no built-in facility to connect to that custom application, you can even develop your own adapters using which you can connect to that custom application and replicate the data. So that kind of facilities they are given, advanced facilities. So almost any source system you can replicate the data from, and then you can perform any transformation, simple or complex doesn't matter. And moreover, those transformations are performed in HANA database itself, because of which performance also will be very high. Conversion and data loading performance is very high. You'll be able to schedule as well as real-time replications. Both are possible here. Scheduling possible, real-time possible. Like this, every benefit you have, every advantage you have. So SAP's main intention is that they want to eliminate these complex landscapes. They want to simplify using this SDI. And even along with the smart data quality, if you go with the DQ, data quality functionalities also you have. But only the limitation there is HANA is mandatory. When you want to replicate the data into HANA, then only you can use it. You can't use it as a generalized ETL tool. That's the only thing. Other than that, it's a pretty good option. But it's not that easy for the customers to simply move on to the new technologies. That too is a new technology. And it's the starting stages. So obviously they have their own apprehension. So they'll take some time to get into this, but this is going to rule the market in the future, particularly when they want to load the data into HANA, not as a generalized ETL tool. Even if you want to push the data from HANA to some other target systems, also you'll be able to do it. That kind of facility also they're given there in SDA. So that's one thing SAP has given. And then finally there is something called smart data streaming. This they don't use it regularly. This is used in exceptional cases. The purpose of this smart data streaming is when you want to capture live streaming data, these kind of technologies are useful. The smart data streaming technologies. Live streaming data means, in big companies like Walmart, Amazon, all these companies, they do something called sentiment analysis. Based on the sentiment of the people doing some analysis, they'll come up with some strategies, marketing strategies, and all that. So they perform this sentiment analysis. How do you capture the sentiment of the people? Generally, use the social media, capture that trending information, the live data, and based on that analysis, they'll come up with some strategies. So that kind of live streaming data from your Facebook, Twitter, that kind of live streaming data, if you want to capture, you need to have some special technologies like this called smart data streaming technologies, used in exceptional cases for capturing live streaming data. So like this, see so many options SAP is offering to you. So using these different ETL tools or replication technologies, so they can replicate the data into HANA. Once the data comes to HANA, a lot of advanced analytical capabilities you have, and they can build some models and then design the reports, and finally reports can be given to the end users, using which they can perform this analysis of the data. So this is what SAP is offering to you, part of your HANA licensing, part of the platform edition and enterprise editions. So one significant point, if you observe here, SAP is not providing any reporting tool part of the HANA licensing. That's what you need to observe. Not even one single reporting tool. See, ultimately, the presentation of the data is done by using some reporting. If you see here, this customer is using some reporting like web intelligence, dashboards. Why SAP is not offering reporting tools part of the HANA licensing is analysis requirements drastically varies from company to company. Drastically varies. In fact, within the company, only different departments want to have different kind of analysis done. And moreover, many of the customers are used to some specific reporting tools. Already they are using reporting tools for 15 years. For example, in a company, in finance department, they are using Excel for last 15 years. Suddenly you ask them to switch to some other reporting tool, they won't be interested in that. That's why what SAP has done is a smart thing. Instead of giving one reporting tool, making it as a limitation, SAP has given some flexibility. What flexibility they offer? Suppose you are a customer, you know your analysis requirements, you decide which reporting tool you want to use, and you buy the license for that reporting tool and just run it on top of HANA and do analysis. It may be SAP reporting tool or non-SAP reporting tool, doesn't matter. That's why they are not providing any reporting tools part of the HANA license. So that's also a significant observation you need to have. They'll give database, they'll give other components and ETL tools, everything, but not reporting tools. Okay, so this is what is about your SAP HANA.